The cameras are off. The press releases have stalled. The palace gates are shut, not with ceremony, but with a profound, deafening exhaustion. In the wake of King Charles's staggering confession and Prince William's raw detonation, the monarchy exists in a state of suspended animation. The institution hasn't collapsed. It has fainted. This is not a power vacuum. It is a truth vacuum. For decades, the machinery ran on unspoken agreements, curated narratives, and strategic silence. Now every hidden lever has been yanked into the light. The royal reset isn't a policy. It's a clinical audit of the soul of the crown, and the patient is in a coma. Behind the gates, the atmosphere is one of shell-shocked bureaucracy. Aides move through corridors like ghosts, speaking in whispers, not out of secrecy, but out of sheer disbelief. The daily red boxes of government papers go untouched. The court circular is blank. The relentless, ancient rhythm of royal duty has met a silence it cannot comprehend. The institution is experiencing a kind of psychic system failure. The key players are in isolated orbits of their own shock. King Charles has retreated to Sandringham, not to rule, but to wander. He is reportedly spending hours in the archive there, not studying state papers, but reading the personal diaries of his grandfather, George VI, a man who never wanted the crown, who stammered under its weight, and who found a fragile, humble authenticity. Charles is looking for a blueprint he never had. Prince William is not at Kensington Palace. He has taken George and Charlotte to a remote cottage on the Balmoral estate, a place with no Wi-Fi, no official phone line. He is not healing. He is performing a hard reboot. His only communication is handwritten notes to a single trusted equerry. The content is not about duty, but about logistics. Firewood, groceries, school lessons. He is deliberately engaging in the painfully simple mathematics of survival to remember what a denominator of one life feels like. Princess Catherine is under strict private medical care. The unraveling witnessed was not merely emotional. Our sources confirm it was a severe somatic episode, a physical collapse brought on by the cumulative, hidden stress of bearing witness. Her treatment is not just rest. It involves a complete information detox. She sees no news, receives no bulletins. Her world, for now, is the texture of linen, the scent of beeswax, and the sound of her children's voices in the next room, a forced retreat into the sensory to escape the tectonic shifts of the symbolic. Prince Harry has left the UK. He did not return to the US. He boarded a flight to Botswana, to a wildlife conservation camp he and Meghan have quietly supported for years. He is not there to reconcile or reflect in the media glare. He is there to work, to wake at dawn, to get his hands dirty, to focus on an ecosystem where cause and effect are immediate, tangible, and uncomplicated by centuries of hidden clauses. It is an act of antidotal labor. But nature abhors a vacuum. Into this silence rush two powerful opposing forces. The first is the government. The Prime Minister and the Cabinet Secretary have initiated Operation Steadfast. This is a constitutional contingency plan for a non-abdicating but non-functioning monarch. It involves the Lord Chancellor and the Speaker of the House taking on the ceremonial duties of the Crown on a temporary emergency basis. The Great Seal of the realm is being used to authenticate laws without the royal sign manual. The state, with quiet, grim efficiency, is building a bypass around the wounded heart of the monarchy. It is proof that the institution can be sidelined by its own government when it ceases to perform its core, mechanical functions. The second force is the people, but not as a protesting mob or a nostalgic crowd. The response is stranger, more profound. A spontaneous grassroots movement has emerged online, the silent vigil of the unseen. People are not gathering to shout. They are gathering in city squares, outside cathedrals, and in parks to stand in silence for 1 hour. No placards, no songs, just a collective, respectful, and unbearably heavy quiet. It is not a show of support or dissent. It is a mirror, a national act of holding up a silence to reflect the palace's own. It is the public meeting the monarchy's breakdown not with discourse, but with a shared, wordless acknowledgement of the fracture. And in a vault in the City of London, the Crown's lawyers are engaged in the most macabre task of all, drafting the legal framework for what they term a recess of the realm. This is a set of documents that would legally formalize the king's stepping back, defining the thresholds for his return, the guardianship of the royal prerogative, and the transfer of sovereign duties to a regency council not led by the heir, but by a committee of former prime ministers and the Archbishop of Canterbury. They are, in essence, writing the user manual for a monarchy in standby mode. The final image, captured by a long-lens photographer and published globally, is of Prince George, not at a window, looking out, but in the Balmoral cottage garden under the grey Scottish sky, building a dry stone wall with his father. No words are exchanged. William passes stones. George fits them. It is slow, methodical, physical work. They are not building a throne, a small, simple barrier against the encroaching peat and heather. In the utter wreckage of the most famous institution on earth, the future king and his heir are learning the most fundamental lesson of all, that before you can rule a kingdom, you must remember how to build a simple, sound wall that will keep the cold earth at bay, one heavy, unglamorous stone at a time. The monarchy is not dead. It has been reduced to its most elemental task, learning how to hold two things together. And they are starting with stone. The photograph of William and George building the dry stone wall did more than humanize them. It recalibrated the entire crisis. It was an image of such fundamental pre-industrial toil that it bypassed the modern chaos of scandal and confession. The world didn't see a prince and a future king. It saw a father and son doing something true. In that silence of shared labor, a new, fragile narrative was born. Not of a monarchy collapsing, but of a family returning to the substrate. This visual reset forced every player to change their calculus. The government's Operation Steadfast hit an invisible wall. Public opinion, measured in eerie silence rather than polls, had solidified around the image of the wall. Any move to formally sideline the monarchy now felt not like prudent constitutionalism, but like a cruel eviction. The Prime Minister quietly shelved the most aggressive contingency plans. The state's bypass would remain, but as a temporary trestle bridge, not a permanent road. The silent vigil of the unseen evolved. The hour of silence began to include a new, simple act. Participants would bring a single, ordinary stone from their own locality. At the end of the hour, they would place it in a growing, informal cairn in the center of their gathering space. These were not monuments. They were tokens of weight, an acknowledgement that everyone carries something heavy and that a foundation, any foundation, is built from accumulated, shared burdens. The public was unconsciously mirroring the Balmoral Wall in 1,000 town squares. Within the family, the wall became a non-negotiable ritual. William and George returned to it every morning, rain or shine. Then Charlotte asked to join. Then Louis. Soon it was not a chore, but the core of their daily existence. No tutors, no aides, no schedules, just the physics of stone, the problem of balance, the shared blisters. Catherine, from her window, watched. Her doctors noted her first genuine, unguarded smile in months at the sight of her family, muddy and focused on a task 4 feet high and 20 feet long. This radical simplicity created a strategic vacuum, and into that vacuum stepped the only person equipped to manage a kingdom in abeyance, Princess Anne. With Charles in contemplative retreat and William in manual labor, Anne became the de facto regent of reality. She didn't hold court. She held site inspections. She toured the dormant royal estates, not to review their grandeur, but to assess their leaking roofs, their antiquated wiring, their overgrown gardens. Accompanied by a single clerk and a master stonemason, whom she consulted on the Balmoral Wall's progress, she compiled a list titled The Essential Repairs. It was a brutally pragmatic document, a priority list of physical decay that needed addressing across the royal portfolio. It made no mention of legacy, diplomacy. It spoke of mortar, timber, and drainage. Her first act was to liquidate a single minor offshore holding from the Duchy of Lancaster, a relic of a bygone financial strategy. She used the funds not for the crown, but to create the Royal Estate Apprenticeship. She hired unemployed young craftspeople from struggling post-industrial towns to work alongside the aging palace tradesmen, fixing the essential repairs. The monarchy, in its silence, became a vocational school for forgotten skills. The headline wrote itself, "As monarchy crumbles, it teaches bricklaying." This act of tangible stewardship did what no speech could. It began to separate the institution from the family. The public's fury and grief were with the dysfunctional House of Windsor. But the apprenticeship and the visible, honest work of the wall sparked a hesitant new respect for the crown as a custodian of craft and land. Anne had inadvertently performed a surgical separation, letting the family drama burn out on the heath while quietly reinforcing the institution's practical, useful skeleton. The final unexpected development came from the tech world. A renowned Silicon Valley pioneer known for his digital detox retreats publicly offered Prince William a proprietary, secure Faraday garden system, a way to create a permanent zone of electromagnetic silence around the Balmoral cottage, allowing his family to remain truly offline. He refused the offer, but he counter-proposed through back channels. Instead of a gift, he asked for the pioneer's help in designing an open-source, low-tech version of the concept using grounded copper wire and simple physics that could be built by anyone. William was no longer just building a wall, he was archiving the method of building silence. We are now witnessing the most profound transformation of the British monarchy since the Glorious Revolution. It is not being led by a king or a prime minister, it is being led by a stonemason's ethos, a princess's pragmatism, and a father's determination to teach his son that the only thing you can truly control is the integrity of the next stone you lay. The crown isn't being abolished or saved, it is being disassembled to its load-bearing elements. The gold leaf is flaking off. The embroidered narratives have torn. What remains is the weight of stone, the patience of mortar, and the slow, silent understanding that some things, once broken, cannot be restored. They must be rebuilt from the ground up, with entirely new materials and with a humility so profound it feels less like rulership and more like a long, necessary atonement with the earth itself. The next reign will not begin with a coronation. It will begin when the last stone on that dry stone wall is set, and William steps back, puts a muddy hand on George's shoulder, and says nothing at all. The silence will be the ceremony. The final stone was not a cornerstone. It was a keystone, wedged into the center of the dry stone wall's low, curving spine. Prince William did not place it. Prince George did. His hands, now calloused and steady, found the perfect fit after 3 minutes of patient rotation and testing. He stepped back. William, Charlotte, and Louis stood beside him. No words. No photograph was taken. The moment existed only for them and for the vast, indifferent Scottish sky. That evening, a single email was sent from a secured, anonymized account to the private secretaries of the King, the Prime Minister, and Princess Anne. The subject line was blank. The body contained one sentence. The wall is complete. We are ready to listen. It was not a return to duty. It was the establishment of a new condition. The Balmoral Wall became the symbolic and literal threshold for all future engagement. The message was clear. Any communication, any issue, any element of the crisis would now be addressed at the wall, not in palaces, not in offices, at the site of their shared, silent labor. The first to accept the unspoken summons was Princess Anne. She arrived at dawn the next day, alone, wearing work boots. She did not greet them. She walked the length of the finished wall, running a hand over the stones. She stopped at the keystone, gave a single, barely perceptible nod of professional approval to George, then turned to William. "The foundation is sound," she said, "but mortar needs time to cure. You can't load it yet." It was both a stonemason's truth and a regent's verdict. The new foundation of the family is set, but the bonds are still green. Do not rush. William understood. "What's the first load?" he asked. Anne handed him a tablet, the only piece of technology she'd brought. On it was a live feed from a body camera worn by an apprentice in the Royal Estate Apprenticeship. It showed a young woman covered in dust, carefully repointing the brickwork of a collapsed greenhouse on a Sandringham satellite estate. "This is the load," Anne said. "Not your pain, their work. Your job is to witness it, to understand the scale of the decay you inherited and the scale of the repair now underway. You rule nothing until you understand what you're asking others to sustain." Thus began the wall sessions. Every morning, William and George would work on a new, smaller project, repairing a fence, clearing a drain. While on the tablet, they watched the live progress of the apprentices across the kingdom. They saw the crumbling infrastructure of the crown not as a financial line item, but as a series of tangible, solvable problems. They heard the apprentices, through the open mic, talk not about the monarchy, but about mortar mix ratios, wage equity, and the pride in seeing a straight wall rise. The heirs were being re-educated not in protocol, but in material responsibility. The second summons was answered by King Charles. He arrived at twilight, looking older, but with a stillness that had replaced his previous anxious energy. He brought nothing. He stood before the wall for a long time. Then he did something extraordinary. He picked up a loose stone from the pile of discards, a stone deemed unfit for the wall, and placed it carefully at the base, not as part of the structure, but as a deliberate outlier. "Not everything fits," he said, his voice quiet. "Not every piece of the past can be integrated. Some must be acknowledged, but left outside the wall." He was speaking of himself, of his reign, of Camilla. He was granting them permission to build their future without trying to incorporate every fracture of his own. William picked up another discarded stone and placed it beside his father's. "But they can mark the perimeter," he said. A silent pact was formed. The past would not be the foundation, but it could define the boundaries. The final, most critical session was uninvited. A delegation from the silent vigil of the unseen arrived. Not leaders, but 3 ordinary participants: a nurse, a teacher, a bus driver. They had been chosen by lot. They each carried a single stone from their hometown cairns. They placed them at the foot of the Balmoral wall without a word. Then the nurse spoke, her voice clear in the cold air. "We don't need you to be perfect. We need you to be accountable. This wall is accountable. Every stone can be seen, touched, and judged. Can you run a country like that?" George, not William, answered. He pointed to the tablet showing the live apprentice feed. "We're learning how," he said, "one stone at a time." It was the only political statement of the crisis that mattered. The monarchy is now operating on a dual track. Track 1, Princess Anne and the government's steadfast committee manage the state machinery, a necessary caretaker operation. Track 2, the Balmoral Wall and the apprenticeship program represent the moral and practical rehabilitation of the Crown's purpose. The world is no longer waiting for a coronation or a statement. It is waiting for the mortar to cure. It is waiting to see if the silent, physical discipline of the wall can translate into a new kind of governance, one based on witness, material honesty, and the slow, unglamorous confidence that comes from knowing, deep in your bones, how to build something that will not fall down when the next storm comes. The next reign has already begun. It began not with an oath, but with the soft clink of one well-chosen stone settling against another. The sovereignty of the future lies not in a scepter, but in the knowledge of load-bearing and in the humility to stand at a wall, listen to the wind, and know your place is not above it, but within it. And so the future of the throne was decided in the shadow of a wall. There was no coronation ceremony. No new king was proclaimed. Instead, a silent agreement was signed. King Charles created a constitutional loophole by approving an official document he called self-governance, allowing his heirs to build their own styles of governance. Prince William changed his role, not his title. He became the chief contractor. His job is to oversee the physical integrity of the royal estates and apprenticeship programs. Princess Anne remained the de facto regent. Prince George, meanwhile, continues to grow up not as someone waiting for the next step, but as someone who adds another brick to the wall every day. The media finally understood the new narrative. This was not a collapse or a resurrection, but a transformation. The monarchy was moving from the realm of symbols to the realm of responsibility. Power would lie not in pomp, but in resilience. When the gates of Buckingham Palace finally opened, the crowd entering would not see a king or queen. Instead, they would see bricklayers, roofers, and gardeners, tools in hand, sweat on their brows, silently and resolutely rebuilding an institution, this time on the right foundations. And so, one of history's greatest crises ended not with an explosion or a revolution, but with the solid thud of a single well-placed stone. The monarchy did not change, its definition changed, and the world witnessed for the first time that silence could be far more powerful than victory cries.